So I guess just a little bit about me, a bit of a bio, a bit of a background. So yeah, so I've basically been in the industry for over 20 years now. I started as a software engineer. Seems like a long time ago now. I was actually in the payments industry, and I basically moved from sort of hands-on engineering roles into sort of tech lead, and then to managerial, and then later on sort of strategic management and leadership roles. And that's where I've kind of been operating for the last 15 years. I'm currently working as a kind of practice lead in sort of engineering culture space, skills and culture space in the UK banking sector. What's really good about that particular role is that it lets me bring together quite a lot of my diverse skill set I've kind of amassed over the last 20 odd years in the industry, which is really quite cool. So I often say I sit at the kind of intersection of engineering, agile, and the communities, because I am an engineer. I was an engineer, hands-on. I've been a practitioner for years. I'm also very active in the agile community as an agile practitioner, as a coach, and I'll go on to talk about that shortly. And I also do a lot of work in the community. I run a number of other community groups, and I love kind of chatting to John about the work he's doing in the BCS community. So I'm sure we'll go and explore that over the course of the session. As I mentioned, I'm active in the Agile Global community. I do a number of conference talks, etc. I run a meetup group, so we host events regularly as well. And I love meeting speakers from all over the world and encouraging them to come and speak at my events. And I'm actually also going to Agile 2022 in the summer as a speaker, which feels like an extraordinary opportunity. So yeah, I'll be off to the US, to Nashville, no less. So that's quite exciting. As John touched on earlier, I'm currently the chair of the BCS Agile Method Specialist Group. I've been on the committee for a few years now, and last April, a number of the committee members were keen for me to take over as chair, and then I agreed to do that, and we'll explore some of that shortly. I think John's got some questions, etc. he's probably going to pose around my work in that particular group, so we'll paint a picture for you. Yeah, I've also done some chartered practitioner assessment stuff, and mentor. I love mentoring. I'm very passionate about both coaching and mentoring, and that's the kind of things I love to help. I love to give back, and I love to help those who are earlier on in their own career journey, so that they can get the benefit of those who've got the scars and got the war stories and all the rest of it, and can help them on their way and point them in the right direction. Also there, I'm active on LinkedIn, so if you want to connect with me, you're welcome to do so. That's how you'll find me. So a little bit more about my journey with BCS quickly. So yeah, I actually joined as a student member. I don't know if you hear that coming up, but yeah, I joined when I was back studying computer science at university. Yeah, I was a member for some years. If I'm brutally honest, I didn't get a huge amount out of being a student member at the time. And then as I moved into the industry and became a software engineer, it started to become a more valuable thing. There's access to a lot of great information on the platforms through the different publications, which have matured immensely over that 20-year journey, certainly when I've been with the organization. And then I built up some years of experience, and then I got chartered. I got chartered as I was a kind of specialist. I specialized in software development, as you might imagine. I came through that, and then I decided to get involved and support the assessment process. So again, really good experience. Met a lot of other amazing practitioners, and you have to be chartered to be assessor. I was doing stage 3. So sitting on, the panels and, working with, those who were trying to become chartered and exploring their journey, learning more about their specialism, etc. And, it's a two-way thing. So, you meet great people, you learn a lot, and it's a great thing to support others coming through as chartered practitioners. I'm active in the Agile community since I'm the early 20s, year 2000 really, and I use something called XP, which some of you might know. Extreme programming, so I had some early brushes with that. And then I joined the committee, as I say, in late 2017. I was working in London at the time, so I was able to get along to some face-to-face meetings with fellow committee members in the old office. It's not where the guys are now, and it was great, a lot of face-to-face conversations, good committee meetings, and the group were very active, doing a great event program, but the landscape's changed a lot, and we will explore that. And then in 2020, I got the opportunity to get involved as an Agile SME and help the revamp of the foundation program. So if you've seen some of those products on the website, and if you were ever to take the foundation certificate, I was one of a small panel of people who wrote some of those questions as part of that. So that was quite an interesting experience, great thing to get involved in. Again, you learn a lot, you meet other wonderful people, and you get the opportunity to make a meaningful contribution to striving for excellence within your own industry, right, within your own space. And that's something I'm very, very committed to. And that's something that the BCS is here to help us all achieve. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I became the chair of the BCS methods. And it was last April actually. And then later that year as well, in the summer, I was awarded a fellowship. And again, that helps me support from a slightly different perspective. I was already doing a lot of kind of work in different guises in the industry anyway, but I love to fly the flag for the BCS. I think they do tremendous work. And I think we're all here to help, shape the profession and make sure it plays its role in shaping society. And I think as a fellow, you get the opportunity to do that. And I also do a number of talks. I recently did the IT Now webinar on hybrid working, something else I'm really passionate about. So you might see that on the YouTube channel. I'm one of the panelists. And I was just as of last Friday talking to Andrea, who's the chair of BCS Women, and she's keen for me to come along and do a talk at one of their future events. So we're currently collaborating on a date that suits. So that's just a bit of a kind of a nod to some of the things I'm currently involved in. And yeah, happy to take questions, and I'll hand it back to John.
Super, thanks for that introduction. There's an awful lot there to unpack, and I'm sure we'll do so in what was billed as a fireside chat, but as I say, it's more of a campfire chat. So everyone on the call, you're welcome to participate in this. So you can either use the chat or use the raise hand function, and I'll bring you in if you've got a question that you'd like to ask. And just hi to Kim there, because I know Kim's kind of just put in chat already, but she's new to the community. So you're very much welcome, Kim. Thanks for joining. Right. So it's always a pleasure to speak to you, Saf. I know we've had a couple of discussions. You're part of also a webinar we've delivered to our new members, talking about the kind of how to get the most out of membership from products and services, but also your volunteering. So really appreciate you kind of taking the time to talk to me again. There's just so much there, really, Saf. I think the immediate question is how do you fit it all in? Because you're doing everything. Like, you're a busy man. Do you eat? Do you sleep?
I definitely eat. I like my food. I'm not a big sleeper, but I obviously need some sleep, as do we all. No, I think it builds up over time, doesn't it? So you go on a journey. I have other commitments as well that I haven't really mentioned. Well, certainly wasn't in those slides there. So I host my own meetup group. I think I did mention that. I'm also a co-founder and a co-host of a podcast. So there's a bunch of different things I do. But what's interesting is the way these things can all come together. And I think that's what's exciting for me. The reason I have done the things I've got involved in and the things we're talking about here today is because I'm passionate about these things, and I'm passionate about the role that the organisation plays. We often talk about skill shortages and the way that we want to continue to champion excellence. I think I mentioned that earlier, and we do need to do that. Technology is so ubiquitous now, right? It's so important to society, to life as we know it, and I think they're the things that encourage me and drive me and make me want to contribute in all the ways that I do.
Yeah, that's really important. And we this morning session, I keep saying morning, this afternoon session, must have been a long day for me already. We talked about kind of, when you're going into volunteering, is to kind of have some intentionality around kind of what is it you want to achieve from all of this. Because quite often for these things do kind of tend to mount up because you find yourself doing one thing, then you find something interesting over here and doing another thing. So being really clear on kind of what you're trying to get out of your volunteering experience will help you kind of navigate what's right, and also help you to kind of, I guess, feel that you're spending your time on the right things, because there's loads of things that you could be doing. So no, really appreciate that. I'm going to pass it over to Graham, because Graham's got his hand up. So I thought let's get the campfire open real early. Hi, welcome, Graham. Over to you.
Hi, John. Yeah, I don't know whether you can see me. Just turn my camera on.
Yeah.
So first of all, just say thank you very much to John for organising these events this week, and also some of the passion that Saf just showed by describing, what he's been up to over the last few years. Personally, for me, I've been in the BCS 30 years, but really not got a lot out of it. I started. I've just finished working for a big company. I took redundancy and early retirement last year. But when I reflect back on my career in IT, it was all very insular. Well, I mean, it was a big global company I was working for, so there was plenty to do community-wise with that organisation. I mean, they helped me get my membership, 30 odd years ago. So I'm a chartered engineer, I'm a chartered IT professional, and I'm now a fellow because I applied for my fellowship last year. But yeah, well, one thing this last year, it's been a bit of a journey for me, because when you finish working, you've then got a big gap, and of course, last year's been a bit of a strange year as well for anybody doing a transition from work to, let's call it, semi-retirement. But I'm very much looking for ways to get back engaged with the industry that basically gave me my career. Get involved. I think the BCS is in a unique position. I'm probably in a unique position to be able to contribute to the BCS. It's probably going to help me fulfil some of my needs, but also trying to find ways of fitting it around, for example, some of the traveling that I want to do over the next few years. So this signposting you did earlier on, and some of the sessions that are coming up this week, I'm going to be taking a lot of interest in to try and work out how I want to contribute and how much time and how to go about it. But it's just been really good, just hearing people talking about what they're doing. I have to say, for the last year, looking into BCS, it's not really been visible to me what the BCS does. I know it's a professional organisation. Obviously, I know about how it works, but a lot of the things like the outreach, the online seminars, I wasn't really too much aware of. Probably my fault for not looking too closely, but equally there's probably more opportunities for outreach there to people who are just too busy to go and look for themselves, if you see what I mean. So I would like to kind of better understand what it is the BCS wants to be and what it's trying to achieve, work out how that can fit in with my own goals, my own wanting to get involved and really kind of give something back to the industry, and then working out what it is that we can do together to kind of make that a success.
Yeah, that's really positive to hear, Graham. And I think I don't think you're the first member to kind of say to me, what is it that BCS do, or you've been a member for a long period of time and not found kind of the thing which really works for you. And I think the reality is, underneath the hood there's lots of stuff, and it's not always that clear what you can get involved in. So part of this week and some webinars that my other colleagues are delivering to some of our newer members, but it's also open to our members now, is to kind of really show and kind of signpost all this stuff to make sure that it's not about you stumbling across it. It's very clear and visible what you can get out of your membership, because ultimately it's that participation element. I don't know if Saf would agree, but it's like we talked about gym membership jokingly earlier, but BCS membership, it really is like a gym membership, right? Because you're only going to get what you put out. And so you can sign up to a gym, and it's great, you might want to tell your pals or put it on Instagram, but you're not really going to see the outputs. You're going to see the muscles growing or the feeling healthy. If you're I'll stop with that analogy because I've used that one too many times. But no, Saf, over to you. Have you got any kind of thoughts on kind of what Graham might kind of get out of things, Aaron?
Oh, it's great to hear your insight, Graham. And I do agree with what John said. I mean, when I'm doing these sorts of sessions or anything else that I'm involved in, I'm usually very quick to say that you get out what you put in. And what I described earlier and what I was talking through, that didn't happen overnight. I kind of stayed involved and contributed in different ways over the years for different reasons. But I mean, listening to your own story, I mean, first thing that jumps out to me is you're going to have a wealth of experience that others can draw upon. So the things you'll have learned and done and the way you'll have contributed to your organisation, and you're a chartered practitioner, you've recently become a fellow, congratulations, welcome to the group, as it were, the gang, or whatever phrase you want to use. But you've got huge amounts of experience, and one of the things I love to do is I love to, wherever possible, share some of that with others who are not at the stage that you and I are at, right? So to me, that typically mentoring. So the BCS has a good mentoring portal. It's a good network. I've mentored different people over the years through that platform. And you go on there, you put up your bio, you explain the type of mentoring you're offering, and what style of mentor you are, and people will reach out to you. I'm almost sure of it, if that's something you're interested to do. Again, there's also your specialisms. What are your specialisms, and how might you support? There's so many specialist groups. So I'm part of the Agile specialist group because I'm an Agile practitioner, and I'm passionate about Agile, and I talk and teach Agile, globally. So I think I can also meaningfully support the work of that group. You'll have your own specialisms and things that you could do. I guess what I'd say there's probably a long-winded answer, sorry, but think about where your passions lie. Whatever your passions are, you'll probably find a way to meaningfully contribute to the work of the organisation. Does that help?
Yes, it does, actually. I mean, I'm going to be going through some decision making, trying to work out whether I want to focus on special interest groups or mentoring or this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's I've only mentioned two things. There's countless examples, and again, it's about how much time you think you can give. I think there's no right or wrong answers on that. John's probably better.
Yeah, I mean, I was enterprise architecture was the specialism that I focused on, but there's a whole wealth of experience over 30 years outside of that as well. But yeah, I mean,
well-established specialist.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a great specialist group, Law Mitchell chairs that for us, and again, they're a committee who are always kind of looking for new expertise. So it's worth looking there. But I also say kind of, you're just locally, just a branch, nice opportunity to kind of meet people in your region and other members with similar kind of interests. So it might be a specialism, but it could also just be meeting other members who have the same passion as you. There are a couple of new groups who have emerged as well over the last year. So for instance, I think the pandemic really kind of emphasized the kind of digital divide that there is in society. And so we now have a digital divide specialist group, and their role is to look at some of the kind of the underlying causes of access to lack of access to technology, and then help in their local communities where there's people with disadvantaged backgrounds. Some disadvantaged backgrounds are even just about access to meals, right? And before they can think about anything else, but from there to try and kind of help to teach and learn, teach skills in IT so that they can start a career. So there's lots of kind of like societal give back stuff in there, as well as you're passionate about profession, as well as just meeting members. So that was really useful, Graham. So I look forward to seeing your name pop up a few more times then in upcoming activities.
No, thanks, John. Thanks, Saf.
Right. Do we have any more questions whilst we've got members in the audience? Okay, we'll see. There might be a couple more questions as we go through. I guess the thing that's always I reflect on is kind of like sometimes I think joining a committee can feel a bit like, what are you signing up to? And it sometimes feels it's a bit of a kind of old world kind of hierarchical kind of type concept that there's committees running all these type activities. So question to Saf is really, what's your kind of what were your expectations of joining a committee versus what were the realities?
Great question. What were my expectations versus reality? Well, again, I guess I was lucky in the sense that I was encouraged to get involved in the BCS Agile committee because I was, going to be working down in London, and I knew two people who were basically two of the co-founders of it, and I think they wanted to bring in some fresh voices, and I guess my expectation is having the opportunity to meaningfully contribute to the work of the group. Understand what that committee is trying to do, and at the time I sort of got involved in the BCS Agile Methods committee, they were already thriving, and I'd been to a number of events that they'd hosted, and they did a lot of stuff. They had a great events program at a time where you didn't see as much as that. So over the last 2 years or so, most of us have probably experienced that shift to virtual events and online conferences. I host events myself elsewhere, So we pivoted to a virtual model and did a lot of events. In fact, in 2020, I did a weekly series. Me and a couple of others who were in that meetup group. So I think my expectation is simply that, it's a group where you can contribute because you've chosen to get involved because you're passionate about that particular thing, similar to what we were talking to Graham about earlier.
Yeah.
And my expectation was met. In fact, to be honest, I never expected to become the chair of that group. It was never really something I was aiming for. I was just encouraged to do it. And I think it links well to lots of other contributions I was already making in the industry.
Yeah.
So, I talked earlier about my events work. So I was already hosting events. So, that wasn't, that was something I could contribute to and support the group in, furthering those ambitions. I'm very comfortable, hosting events, doing what you're doing tonight, as well as, planning them and organizing them and finding speakers. So again, I've got a good online network. So, I'm tapping into that to support the group's work and find people who can speak, to the kind of topics that we think are current and relevant to our membership.
Yeah.
So it's that type of stuff. In fact, I've got a couple of good examples that I can share coming up, if now's the time.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do.
So I guess one of the other interesting things that shifted in the specialist group space is you guys at BCS HQ, you've introduced the early advocate career role, right, which is now a mandatory role on the committees. And I think that's an excellent development. The reason I think that's an excellent development is because it helps all the groups and encourages all the groups to actually really think about, well, how are you supporting those who are earlier on in their career? And that's something I'm very passionate about. I've talked about that throughout this evening session, and it's something I also do a lot of in my day job through the work I do in my practice and the role my area plays within, the bank's engineering community.
Yeah.
So I think what we're doing is we've shifted that. So what I've done is, as chair, I've basically sort of changed the strategy so that becomes our primary driver and focus. Because there are lots of other groups out there who are doing events and various other programs and contributing, because Agile is a broad global thing. There's lots of people in that space. But what we're doing is we're very much focused on trying to support those who are very early on in their journeys. And what can we do, as an experienced group of practitioners who are part of this committee? So I'm quite keen, we do these sorts of bits like session you're hosting here now, but like panel sessions and your group discussions and sessions where members who are certainly early on in their Agile journey can come along and pretty much ask the committee anything. Because we've been doing this stuff for a long time, but we've actually got an event middle of this week which is very much targeted at those who are perhaps trying to break into the Agile industry, for example, and don't really understand the roles or understand what a career might look like in Agile roles. So that's an event we've set up and we're hosting it on Wednesday.
Excellent.
I'll be kind of the host of that, and some of my fellow committee members will be part of a group discussion that we're hosting. The other thing we're doing, which I think is also aligns very much with our 2022 strategy, is we're going to be hosting an in-person conference in London later.
Oh wow!
September.
Real people.
Again, the reason we're doing that is because a number of us are experienced conference organisers. So I've hosted conferences before. I've helped design them. In fact, I was part of a global team that created something called the Agile 20 Reflect conference, which was a distributed global team that came together to create a month-long festival to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Agile. And in the end of that, through that federated model, there were over 800 events hosted across the globe. I was part of the central team. So that experience, that type of thing, I'm bringing that back into the work that I do as chair of this group. So that's that. If anybody on this call is in the Agile space or keen to build their conference experience, conference speaking experience, that's why we're doing it. We're trying to encourage new voices and fresh faces into the conference speaking circuit.
And that's in the chat now. So anybody.
Both in the chat now, yeah. So one of them is the event on Wednesday, and the other one is our platform for taking proposals for possible talks for September's conference.
Great. Great to hear you talking about those kind of supporting those people in their earlier careers and kind of giving back in that way and sharing your expertise to give people that kind of foot up, really. You talked about your own personal experience was probably receiving the same kind of benefit of kind of people kind of helping you to come forward. So if someone wants to get involved in a member group, what would you say the kind of next steps are, really? Is it a case of just go along to an event, start just talking to people and is that simple?
It's I think you and I talked about this before. It's just get involved, reach out. You just never know. I mean, if you don't ask, you won't learn, you won't find out. I mean, I think I said this in a previous event that I think might have been you and I were part of the same event. And when I first got involved in this sort of meetup world and event circuit, I was new to it. I didn't really know, event planning organizer wasn't something I did. And locally in Edinburgh, where I'm based, I just used to go along to events in the evening after work. But I never, I wasn't active. I was just there. I was very passive. I used to listen to the speakers and learn stuff, and I didn't necessarily engage that much. I mean, I'm not an introvert. I'm very much an extrovert. But and over time, then started to build up some relationships with the event organisers and just got talking. I mean, I think there's never any pressure. That's what I like about these things. It's volunteering is just that. You give as much as you can. But I think there's always an opportunity to get involved. And as I said, when Graham was talking earlier, the thing I'd always say is think about where your passions lie and go down that route, because when you're really passionate about something, as we all know, it's an amazing, how much you can contribute and what you do achieve. And all the things I've done, and people do look at the stuff I've done, well, that's a lot of stuff, much like what you said earlier. It's the passion that drives that, it's the passion and that sort of that purpose-led approach. You're driven by the purpose of what you're trying to do. But yeah, go along, get involved, and when you're ready to, have conversations and just say you'd like to contribute. People are always keen to have more people involved, get broader contribution, because fresh faces, fresh voices, they bring fresh ideas.
Absolutely. You've got an excellent memory, Saf, because that was
it was what it was, isn't it?
That was 9 months ago we talked about that. And for everyone else's context, I was just reflecting on I probably am on the scale of being an extrovert, but networking always just feels so weird to me. And so kind of just standing around and not knowing what to do, and then deciding to just leave the place because I'm just scared to talk to anyone throughout my earlier career. But no, I think that's it. Realistically, everyone's in that kind of boat, aren't they? And it's just like you got to just sometimes just push yourself a little bit, and people will want to have these conversations with you. And certainly our groups, they're actively looking for people to join their committees and get involved in volunteering. And it's worthwhile just kind of just putting your hand up sometimes, because people will bite your hand off.
Can I just describe again?
Yeah, go on, Graham. Yeah, please do.
It's a question about local groups, really. Because when I've been looking for where is my local group, I would have expected to find more there than there is, shall I say. So I live near Cambridge, and I was really surprised to find that there was no BCS group in Cambridge, given the size of Cambridge University and the industry and the number of technology companies who are based in that area. Equally, in Essex doesn't seem to have a group anymore. I think it had one in the past, but that shut down. So my nearest group is actually Hertfordshire. So I've joined the Hertfordshire group, again, no problem, but they don't appear to have any meetings. They've had one AGM in the last 12 months that I can see, and maybe they had things at the start of last year, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot going on. So I would very much have liked to have gone along, shown my face, met some people. But most of my interaction with the BCS seems to be on video calls like this these days. And perhaps that's just the nature of the last few years, and we need to get back to where we were. But it does, getting involved and getting face to face is a challenge. It would appear.
Yeah, and no, I mean you're spot on. Some of it is just the change of environment since COVID. And I know lots of our groups are now just starting to return to kind of holding face-to-face meetings. As Saf said, they're holding their first in-person Agile conference from a couple of years. Hertfordshire typically advertise, so I know this context because I know the group well, but typically have advertise their activities on Facebook. I think there's a BCS Hertfordshire Facebook group, and they will tend to kind of live stream their events through Facebook. So they haven't been putting them on their events calendar, but that's the way they do it. So definitely check out or Google BCS Hertfordshire YouTube, and you'll find some of their prior events. and a Facebook group as well. They're doing lots of their listings. There is actually a need in Cambridge and Essex for volunteers to come forward to kind of support branches in those areas. And so what you kind of see with some of our branches is that there's a kind of, you'll go through times where there's lots of people able to kind of help and support a committee, and a couple of committee members might not be able to support it anymore, and you might see a drop off. And so what we're trying to do for activities like this is really kind of like continue that sustainability of groups by getting new blood into groups constantly and getting new people interested in what they do. So, more than happy to chat afterwards, Graham, if it's something in Cambridge that you'd like to kind of, get started. We'll most certainly want to kind of support you at that. So there is that chance. And I also know the Hertfordshire committee were looking at kind of new committee members as well. So that might be a kind of way of learning a bit more about what they do and what the committee members like. And then you might think, well, let's have a go at starting Cambridge.
Probably a little bit ambitious to start a whole group in Cambridge, but certainly just participating in the local Hertfordshire group. I mean, I'm right on the Essex-Cambridgeshire Hertfordshire border, so any one of those three is kind of okay. But I would have expected more around Cambridge.
Yeah, you'll see a note come out very shortly. So the Hertfordshire committee are keen to kind of support members in those areas because they're kind of very aware that there's a big gap in that part of the country. So there'll be a communication going out shortly to you. As long as you're on the border, I think we're just able to contact people on the border there of the Hertfordshire branch. But I'll make sure to also send it to you, Graham. So thank you. Great to hear that. Anybody who's kind of trying to figure out where to find out this information, there's a local branch or section. This is all in My BCS on the so you log into the BCS website. Communities, and then there's a section for branches and specialist groups which lists all the groups and that are part of BCS. Super. Saf, just coming back to you for a moment. I mean, you maybe talked about this already, but you're committing to a lot. Does everybody need to kind of commit to doing everything? What's commitment? What do you really need to, I guess, think about when wanting to commit to a member group role, would you say?
No, that's a good question. Just be honest. I'd say be honest with yourself about the level of time commitment you can give. So there's nothing worse than, aspiring to get involved in something and then realizing you don't actually have the capacity and you can't make the sort of contribution that you'd hoped you could. And that's even happened to me in the past. There was some other, role I was performing. It wasn't a BCS thing. And I had a lot of other things going on at the same time. And then I came to the sad realization that I wasn't meaningfully contributing. And, I had some conversations with those who were organising and running, and then I stepped down from the role. And that does happen sometimes. But I think, just look at your schedule, look at where the gaps are, look at realistically how much time you can afford to give. But people can usually afford to give some time. I'm really regimented about how I manage my time, etc. Everybody's different. Everybody's got different tools, different mechanisms, different ways that they manage their calendar. Think about the time commitment you can give and be honest with yourself. That's probably what I would say. Yeah,
that's really important. I mean, it's so you don't want to feel like the guilt of volunteering but not being able to actually volunteer your time. You don't want to put an additional burden onto yourself. So be really honest about that. Think about that commitment when you go and look at any of these opportunities across the next couple of weeks. So we're running kind of just out of time. We're due to finish at 6:45. I think I probably asked quite a lot of questions that I was going to ask, and I think we've managed to kind of discuss them as part of the chat with Graham there. So I'm going to do is just thank you very much, Saf, for joining us on this campfire. And it did become a bit more of a campfire. At least there were 3 people on the chair side, so it's good to open up a little bit. Definitely. Anybody else on the call, if you've got any thoughts at all about this stuff, please feel free to kind of look onto the BCS online community, and I'll put that in the chat. So it's community.bcs.org, and you can continue some of these conversations and find out a bit more about how to get involved on there. So thank you. So I guess a round of applause, Saf. Really appreciate your work and all the ways you're contributing to BCS as an organisation and sharing your experiences.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. So just to kind of finish off, again, many of you who would have been on this earlier session today, I've probably said about this link a million times, but there are lots of different ways that you can get involved with BCS, and SAF's a prime example of that. Actually, I think I counted 6 or 7 different volunteering efforts made by SAF there. But there's there's a bit of a list here. So we do a member groups tonight. We talked a little bit about that. We're going to be talking about Barefoot and how do we support teachers tomorrow evening. On Wednesday, we'll be exploring assessment, another thing that SAF does. And then on Thursday, mentoring. Olivia, who spoke earlier today, will also be giving a presentation on mentoring with a couple of our mentors and talking about their experiences. But remember, sometimes these things can feel quite heavy duty. So just think about what's right for you. And there's things like just writing a piece of content, could be joining something like a feedback panel and sharing your experience of BCS membership and how we can improve it, or sharing your expertise and commenting on policy consultations. So I've got the link here. I'll put it in the chat again for you all, and please do look at that, and that'll send you off in the kind of next direction for you. So super. Saf just mentioned if you'd like to kind of connect on LinkedIn, Saf's put his LinkedIn in there, I think. So please feel free to connect. Anybody else, feel free to drop your LinkedIn in chat. You're welcome to kind of connect with each other. Otherwise, that's it for this evening, and look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on our next session tomorrow as we explore Barefoot. Thank you. Cheers all. Good night.